So I'm about to be joined by our partners over at InMoment. So we'll be joined by Charlie West and Ben Daubney in just a few seconds, and they're going to be talking about unlocking ROI from your data and insights. So just an intro before they come through and join us. Charlie is a senior insights specialist over at InMoment and is a self-proclaimed insights geek with over 10 years of experience in CX. While Ben is the director of insights over at InMoment and leads the insights team and has been doing data collection and insights work for over 15 years. So you guys are in great hands. Just before I do hand over, because I see that they've joined me now, if you want any questions, please remember to use that Q&A box. We'll get to as many as we can about throughout the end of the session. And do make sure that you check out InMoment's report on the state of CX, which is going to be made available to you now. And that was done with MPSX, who incidentally are also running a session with us tomorrow at 10:30 EST. So without any further input from me, welcome, Charlie. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chloe. Nice to be here today. Great. Welcome everybody to our session today. I was going to do intros, but Chloe has so beautifully introduced us. I don't think that's really going to be necessary. I'm going to be starting the session today and supported by Ben, who's going to be kind enough to show the slides. And then I'll be handing over to Ben for the second half of the session. So Ben, if you want to get the slides up, that would be lovely. Thank you. So we want to talk to you today all about how to empower the teams within your organization through insights and enable them to take action to create that enhanced customer experience. This is very close to my heart. There was a lot of that I've done in previous roles around this. So hopefully you'll find what we're going to talk about today interesting. So if we go on to the first slide, please, Ben. We wanted to think about this in terms of an integrated CX. So it's really combining all the important elements of a customer experience program. And today we'll be mainly focusing on the signals and insights, but obviously really important is the actions that come out of that. So integrated signals is all around pulling the data from across your business, might be from multiple sources, and aggregating it into your CX platform. And then using that technology to create insights and federate that out to your business. So get that CX data into the hands of those people who can action it. And although taking the actions won't be the focus of the session today, facilitating that data-driven approach to enable your teams to prioritize the actions will be. And of course, the actions are the most important thing. Never mind the numbers, never mind the insights. We want to make sure that we're taking those actions. So if we go on to the next slide, please. And we're going to talk about integrated signals and the data and some of the things that I think are really important when gathering and preparing your data as part of your CX program. And on the next slide, thank you. I'm going to start with talking about trustworthy data. To me, I think this is really the foundation for any CX program. I've had issues with data in the past, and I've kind of learnt about this the hard way by having things that weren't so great and being questioned and having to rework stuff. So for me, any time that you spend within your CX program on the initial setup and design, to make sure that you've got those strong foundations can save you longer term any reworking or having to justify your results to your stakeholders. So by ensuring that your data is high quality and reliable, you can start to build the trust across the business with your key stakeholders and make sure that your CX program is trusted, the insights you're delivering are trusted, and any reports created are really usable within your organization. And all of that, enabling those targeted insights and reports lead on to that timely and prioritized actions within the business. So, it's all around really wanting to get your stakeholders engaged and making sure that everything that you do within your data and your program is enabling them to look at business cases, root cause analysis, and drive actions. So on the next slide, really thinking about the right data that you might have. Traditionally, CX programs were very much built on survey data, but with tools such as text analytics now available, there's all sorts of data that you can pull in. And actually, it can be really nice to think about what data do I already have before I even think about a survey. So, you know, it might be that you have got social data, you might have review data. There's all sorts of data within the business, or even CRM and data can be really good as well. You know, any kind of like written data which can be used and analysed within your CX platform. And all of that can mean that when you're looking at doing a survey, it can be more focused. But when thinking about which data to use, it's important to consider how it's going to be used in any analytics and dashboards and what are the results that you're looking for. So you need to ensure that you're including the right customers in terms of the data pulling through. So whose data are you using? If you're looking at an overall relationship, you might want to look at your whole customer base. Whereas if you're looking at specific touch points or journeys, you'll need to be more focused on whose feedback you're selecting. Are you collecting the data at the right time? If you're looking at overall relationship type insights, you might be at any point in when customers are engaging with your product and service. However, if it's for a specific interaction or touch point, you might want to collect data really quickly after they've interacted with your business so their feedback remains relevant. For instance, for an online purchase, collecting data immediately afterwards mean you can assess any issues and make any corrections quickly, for example, with your checkout process. For surveys, you also want to make sure that you're surveying in the right channel. You know, would it make more sense to send a survey out via email or text or even WhatsApp these days, or perhaps a post-call IVR survey? You'll also need to make sure you have the right volumes of feedback. You know, you want to make sure you've got really robust numbers to give reliable insights, particularly if you've got a main metric that you're using, such as satisfaction or net promoter score. It's also worth considering what data not to use. You know, not all data is good data. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're using something like text analytics, you want to make sure that actually what you've using is written well. And sometimes some of the data coming through social media or agent notes and CRM data might actually not be very comprehensive and might not be very usable. So it's always worth making sure you've got the right data and you've identified what to collect and what's not to collect. Got a quick poll here. I'd be really interested to understand from your CX program, you know, what data do you use and what data do you have and include as part of your CX program? Great. And while that's going on, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you, Ben. So data governance. So I have to say that for me, when I was running CX programs, data governance doesn't always sound like the most exciting thing. And I didn't always look forward to those meetings, although actually on reflection, I was really grateful to have the support of those teams to make sure that I had some support in enabling good data. And it's actually worth not just kind of like ad hoc looking at data, but really think about it as a part of the process of your CX program and really think about having that data governance framework in place. So, you know, making sure you've got a process to ensure your data quality is good. Make sure you've got some internal resources assigned to monitor and correct any issues with the data as you're going through your program. It can really help to make sure the rest of your program runs smoothly. Engage with your content experts, perhaps your customer service teams or your fulfillment or digital teams, to help understand how the interactions are recorded in other systems. So if you're looking at other metadata, you want to think about when you're timing or pulling the data, you understand how that's working, how that interaction with the customer is working. So you can make sure that you're getting that data at the right time. And you're measuring those important interactions. Ensuring you have the support from your IT and data teams will really mean, if you can get them to understand what you're trying to achieve, why the data is important, they can help lead that data quality program, which means that when you get the data back, it can be much more easily analysed, much more robust insights. And for surveys, you'll also want to consider what kind of metadata do you want. So if you're going to want to segment your data later or provide targeted insights for specific teams, what are you going to need to enable them to do root cause analysis and understand where you've got good or poor experiences? So things like customer location, interaction type, product holdings, or perhaps revenue, if you want to do some of that ROI analysis. And all of that will increase your collaboration with the organization, the buy-in, and reduce those data validity queries. And on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more around the integration and automation of data into your CX program. So getting the data in via automated processes can really help to reduce the data handling required and free up your CX team to concentrate on the insights and the actions that they're giving to the business. I know myself, I've spent an awful lot of time looking at data, trying to figure out what went wrong with it, understanding, and transferring data from one place to another manually always just kind of means that you may have errors with that. It'll also increase your efficiency. So if you set up automatic APIs or other kind of data feeds from perhaps your social media systems, your CRM systems or review platforms, it really does help to increase that efficiency and free you guys up. I would also definitely advise that there's a monitoring process set up. So if any changes are made in the source systems, for instance, other teams making changes in the way that they process customer data, make sure that there's a process in place to make you aware. Again, I've had loads of times in the past when I've set up all the data processing, I've set up these automated feeds, somebody makes a change to the data, how maybe they fill it out into a different field, maybe they change the processes, which then completely breaks my data feed, and can spend days or weeks trying to identify what's gone wrong. So moving on to insights. So when you're thinking about insights, you want to make sure that they're really going to be relevant to your audience. You need to make sure it's relevant. So when it comes to designing your reports or thinking about the dashboards that you want to design, it's really important to understand your stakeholder needs and how they can best use your data to drive actions within their teams. And for me, there's nothing like actually sitting down with somebody, really taking the time to talk to them, what's your team trying to achieve? What are your current reporting structures? What are your performance management tools? And how can some of the CX data fit into that? Being a CX practitioner, you won't often have any direct management with your key stakeholders. So it's all around influencing and alignment with those stakeholder needs. Somebody said to me the other day that being a CX practitioner is really like being a salesperson internally to your organization. But sometimes when you're within those functions, it can feel like those CX goals are being pushed onto your teams. And so by engaging with them early and really understanding, listening and supporting their goals and the idea being making them successful in their areas, you can really make sure that your program is a success. For instance, executives and boards are they'll be interested at a high level. How do they increase revenue across the business? Where are there opportunities to cut costs? How can they prioritize resources? Which areas or journey within the business have the biggest potential for increasing customer satisfaction and delivering strong ROI? At a management level, they may be more focused on a particular function. What customer touch points might be poor? Where do they need to focus their teams? How are different locations or different employees performing? Whereas employees might want to know, what are customers saying about their experience with me? How can I improve my customer interactions? There are lots of different ways that you might want to cut or slice and present your data. And on the next slide, very old mantra, designing with the end in mind. It's very well known, but always worth being always relevant in this case. And it can be sometimes easy to forget when you're down in the weeds. Ben's going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. But for all the processes I've considered so far, whether you're thinking about your data, your reporting, your dashboards, always want to be considering where are you going and what are you trying to achieve. Will your dashboards enable your functional teams to act on the data and make those improvements to the customer experience and make your business and your program more successful? Who's going to be using your dashboards and how can they take action on them? How can you make them personal for your stakeholders or groups of stakeholders? Will you need different dashboards for different groups, different reports going out on a regular basis? Collaboration again with those teams to help them provide those insights in a language which resonates with them. Talked just now in terms of some metrics and adding some context and around the insights. So, make them focused for those individual stakeholders, make sure that they understand the data that they're getting, and add some illustration, I guess, to what you're providing. Make sure enabling prioritization if possible with the metrics, and that people can then drill down also and look at root cause analysis, which might mean that you need to provide some people with some of the raw data as well as the high level metrics. And of course, make sure you're giving access to relevant teams and stakeholders, and training them, helping them understand. I used to spend a lot of time training different groups. And actually, in the end, I set up training and webinars and training materials so people can really understand, what do the metrics mean, where have they come from, and really give that transparency within your organization. So next, I want to look at the integration or automation of data, this time out of your CX platform. So out of the CX platform and towards other systems like reporting tools, CRM systems, ensures that the relevant information is available when and where it's needed. If you think about your business users, they will very likely be using several different tools in their day-to-day roles, and being able to access that customer information outside of the CX platform will make them more efficient and much more easy for them to get hold of it. For instance, customer service teams could build reports and track customer satisfaction performance within their CRM systems if you've imported it in. They can incorporate it into their current processes, removing the need for that additional training and any access to the CX platform. Think about integrating with marketing databases, providing that centralized view of the spend, centralized view of the customer and their experience across different channels, alongside perhaps some of the other communications that your customers are getting. So it's worth considering if you have opportunities to integrate your systems and get that customer data into the hands of the end users more easily. Can it be added to functional performance reporting? To give that customer priority when developing a product or a service roadmap. How are business decisions made within your business? How do people prioritize that resource? Can CX data add an additional lens to that? It can be really tricky and actually need time to develop working closely with other teams. But embedding that CX data into your business reporting really means that your customers become part of your business's decision-making process. So lastly for me, I want to talk about action. So this all comes back, thinking about the actions, thinking about how we're integrating that with the whole CX process, and most of all, empowering your teams to act. So on my last slide, just to kind of finish off to say, if you've got your trustworthy data and you've built some great dashboards and you've got the reports which are delivering insights to the business, you now have that consistent view of that customer experience across journeys and touch points. It can be really helpful to have that transparency and that view across the business and a understanding across the whole business and different teams to really understand the drivers of your customer satisfaction. Different functions can see their impact, they can see what's happening with other teams as well, and they can spend their time looking at the root causes and developing the actions to improve those experience rather than just worrying about the number and where it's come from and what data is behind it. This in turn leads to more timely response to customer issues, either directly or through strategic change. And all of this empowers your business to use that customer feedback to inform their decision-making processes and improve the customer's experience. So that's the end of my section, and I'm now going to hand over to Ben to go into more detail about the kind of insights and the reports to consider and include.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. What I want to talk about in a little bit of detail is some of those insight reports and some of those actions and how to deliver them. But before I do that, I think it's worth reflecting on what Charlie has spoken about there, and indeed what Mary Beth was talking about before we started this presentation about 20 minutes ago, which is how do you empower teams? What is it that you are trying to communicate? You are trying to communicate relevant actions to those individuals. if we're thinking about empowering teams, really we want to be asking ourselves a series of questions. Who is the right audience that we should be talking to internally? Senior executives, sure, but do we want to talk to every department leader? Do we want to talk to every manager? Do we want to talk to every team leader? Do we want to communicate something to every single employee? In some organizations, yes. In others, no. It's also useful to think about what signals would be useful to those individuals. As an example, I received a delivery of a new washing machine last week, not from Lowe's, I have to say, and the delivery driver handed me a card at the end and expressed to me that he needed to get 74% NPS and told me that an NPS score was the percentage of people that scored a 10 out of 10. He was coaching me to do something called NPS, which had been communicated to him as an important metric. Is an NPS really important to a delivery driver, or is something more akin to knowing how many people are satisfied useful to him? And in those sorts of instances, is an NPS score truly representative elsewhere in the organization? Thinking about the insights that need to be delivered, maybe it is an NPS score, or maybe it is something a bit more actionable, verbatim comments to some people, particular lines of action to others, particular accounts or customers that are at risk to some other people, and that will vary depending on the audience. Key to that, once you've identified those different audiences, is thinking about what actions they can take. Charlie talked a lot about having conversations with those people and making sure that you are delivering something which is meaningful, but also actionable to those individuals really is key. Once you've done that, taking a step back and saying, does this framework that we are providing all of these people across the organization help meet our organization's strategic goals, really is key. Having an NPS target is really, really useful. Coaching delivery drivers to tell people that they need to give you a 10 completely changes the meaning and purpose of that sort of NPS score. And finally, it's worth thinking about this as a continuous feedback loop. You are communicating actionable insights to the rest of the organization. Can those teams feed back to you in a meaningful way to ask for new data, new insights, new information, new actions delivered in a slightly different or meaningful way? Mary Beth talked about particular teams coming to her and saying that they are working on a particular initiative. Can those sorts of teams have those conversations with you right now? And if not, how can you engage them? It's always worth thinking about a CX program as having really two steps. The first is to think about brilliant basics and making sure you get the absolute essentials right. So you always want to be thinking about these four things more than anything else that we'll talk about today. Number one, who in your organization actually needs the insights? Number two, why do they need insight? How is it going to help them to do their job? And how is it going to help the organization to succeed? Number three is thinking about how CX data can help with those individuals' challenges. What is it that we could collect? What is it that we could interpret? What is it that we could process and deliver to those individuals to help them to do their job better? And then the fourth step, and this is maybe a step, something a little bit bigger, is thinking about how the insight could go further. But always start with the brilliant basics. And what we mean by that is, as we've been talking about over the past 20 minutes or so, thinking about your audience and delivering something that's right for them. So consider an executive on the board, head of the organization, have a discussion with them, talk to them about what it is that they need to see, and create reports that really align to those goals. You might deliver them and work with them to deliver something like this. In an organization where we're thinking about a very small select number of customers, your CEO, your board member might need to know the number of responses and they want to know NPS. And in that organization, you might be thinking about a quarter-on-quarter view. Are my number of responses going up quarter-on-quarter? Is my NPS score going up quarter-on-quarter? Do I need a live view? Do I need to see how this changes week on week, month on month? In this organization, working with this senior executive, we established that they needed that quarter-on-quarter view, which is why we have that over on the top right. Number of responses, NPS score, and how that's changed versus the previous quarter. What's also going to be important for this executive is what action can they take? Well, maybe a big thing for them is the number of detractors. They've only got a small number of respondents. In this organization, they had a small number of customers. They need to see if they have detractors this quarter. They need to see how much revenue those detractors actually account for. They then can potentially use this to say, wow, are there any customers who are in my $1 million plus NMR band? There aren't any detractors there at the moment. I don't need to worry about that revenue. But I do have 5 people that spoke to us this quarter who are in that 250 to $1 million band. In this organization, there is a decision to deliver this information in a grouped view like this, where we are saying there are 5, to enable conversations for the board member to then come to us and say, who are those 5? Can you give me more information? What are the sorts of things they are saying? This is a very quick, very easy, high-level view for a senior executive. Do we want to deliver the same sort of thing to maybe a store manager or the owner of a dealership? In some instances, yes. In some instances, no. What we will often do working with our clients is to say, maybe something for a local manager is something more like this, where they can see the comments from every single one of their customers that have left a review. They can read those comments, and maybe they can do some aggregation by the tags in the comments that are being triggered as a result. In this particular screenshot, I've loaded it up showing all 10,000 comments from the whole organization. We would load this up and get this sorted so that an individual store owner or store manager could see just the comments for their team, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, that sort of volume that they might read once a month or once a quarter, but enough to give them a really detailed view, maybe along with some trending analytics to say, this is how happy people feel, this is how sad people feel, this is how it's changing quarter on quarter, week on week. Are people happier now, sadder now? Are they mentioning particular staff members, particular topics more now or less than before? What we're not showing necessarily is an NPS score. And again, it's always worth thinking an NPS or an OSAT is maybe a key metric for the organization. It's certainly a key metric for us as CX professionals. Is it useful at that lower level? Always worth considering. Once you start to build out these reports, you can then start to think, well, how much can we really do with CX data? And I wanted to show 2 examples of where you can take CX data further. We've worked with some clients, and we had a methodology where they came to us and said, you know what, quite a lot of the time, we look at comments for certain teams, and there's nothing actionable there. We have a lot of people saying, we're really happy, there's nothing to report, nothing to improve. What it's possible to do once you start to get the brilliant basics right is to go further and to say, well, let me look at an individual team. Can I look at the things that people are talking about more than average, or maybe even less than average? Can I give a particular team an improvement plan based on what their customers are not saying compared to what customers are saying about other teams? And that's definitely possible. We've got a methodology for this that looks at the importance of those things that people talk about, as well as how often they are talked about in one team compared to the rest of the organization. And that allows us to say, well, in this team, more people are talking negatively about communications and timeliness, but fewer people are talking positively about the number of staff involved and professionalism. So it gives us something really actionable for this one team to improve. At a team level, that's really useful. But what about at the rest of the organization? Well, taking a step back, we've worked with organizations that have really got this cracked, and they've said, we can identify the big things that impact revenue for us. And in our fast food restaurants, we're able to say, we know that there are 3 things that really impact our revenue, and that is how often, how long people wait for their food, the quality of the food, what it tastes like, and how clean the restaurant is. Knowing that, what happens if I change the wait time from 10 minutes to 7 minutes? What happens to my average revenue per location? What happens if I improve the taste of the food? And we start to build out a view like this that enables people to see what the impact would be on an average location's revenue as a result. these sorts of things, they are way in the future. You need to make sure you've got a lot of things sorted first. You need that data. You need to be able to do that analysis, walk before you can run. But this is the sort of thing that CX data can do, and it enables organizations to take the right actions. So we are just about at time. I know Charlie's got a final little summary slide for us to wrap up on.
Thanks, Ben. Oh, it's getting very into your graph there. So in summary, 4 bullet points. Make sure that your data is trustworthy and relevant. And this will really help to have engaged stakeholders who trust your data and reduce those data validity questions. Integrate where possible. This frees up the CX team to really focus on the strategy and the business engagement and develop those meaningful insights that Ben's been showing us. Always design with the end in mind. Make sure that your metrics are relevant and engaging, and enable those teams to do those root cause analysis and define and prioritize the actions. And lastly, distribute your CX data. Getting it out into your organization enables your teams across your business to have that consistent view of your customers' experience and really understand where they can improve. So that is the end of the slide. So Claire, I don't know if we've got any questions or if we've got time for any questions.
Hi, yeah, that was a really great presentation, and we've actually got quite a few questions, but we're a little bit short on time. I will go ahead and ask one that was sent in here. So how can you deal with low data literacy in a company?
Oh, it's a great question. Ben, do you want to answer that, or shall I?
Yeah, something that we do think about a lot is making sure that you are communicating to the right people in your organization in a way that makes sense for them. At a senior level, you can talk about NPS, you can talk about OSATs, you can talk about likelihood to return. At an in-store level, will people really know those sorts of things? Maybe yes, maybe no. And you start to talk to them to say, can you make people happier? Can you communicate to them in a way that makes more sense? That's really the key thing. Sometimes a number is really useful, but sometimes just talking about the experiences that we're trying to improve just in plain English and being able to communicate that to people in plain English is really the key thing. Is that fair in your experience?
And telling a story, I think, if you've got and not the data, it's you might have to do training on a regular basis. You make sure that you've got those materials available to explain to people, and tell it in a way that resonates with that team, so they understand, like what are we actually talking about in a in a circumstance that they might be relevant. So if you've got people in retail that Ben was talking about, what is the impact? Why should we be doing it? Help them understand in a situation that they can relate to. I think making it relatable.
Thank you both. That is about all we've got time for, but you can find Charlie and Ben on LinkedIn. I have attached their profiles to their speaker profiles. So if you just go to the lobby under the speakers tab, you'll find both of them if you want to continue this conversation offline. But thank you both so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone who did send questions in. Sorry that we didn't get time to reach more. And just before you guys drop, I'm going to just quickly reveal the polling results. Yes. So loads of people using surveys, quite a lot using reviews, not so many using social data, interestingly.
That is interesting. Thank you very much for doing that. I thought I really want to understand that. So that's great. Thank you, everybody, for answering.